Hi everyone and welcome. We're down here in my wormery and I've got my VermiBag Mini out here because it's been a week since the bin was last fed, the bag, and I took a frozen mango and a mango as big as a softball. I took my hacksaw and I chopped it into separate pieces directly through the seed in multiple spots. So the middle section of the seed is still in this big middle section, and the two ends of the seed are over here. So now the seed is actually accessible from both sides, because you've seen in my other bins, probably if you've watched any of my videos in the past, I just take the seed, put it right into the bin, and it could take months before that thing gets to the point where the worms can actually get to the inside of it. So this way we're immediately making the entire seed inside and out available to the worms. Hopefully that'll help speed along the decomposition and consumption process. Down here also, besides the food, I got this little part of a carton, same as one of these cartons that I got my used coffee in. This piece of carton that I chopped the top off of, you might be able to see there's a little bit of liquid floating in here. I've got some vinegar placed into this, and I was going to put that right on top of the cardboard that's in the bin. If you come in a little bit closer, you'll see why. The bin for some time now has had little flying insects buzzing around, not causing too much of a commotion, and for the most part ending up dead on the cardboard. So I mean, a week ago, last time we were in here to feed, there was nothing on top of that cardboard, but now you can see it's riddled with the bodies of dead gnats or fruit flies or whatever they are, and flying all over the place, especially now that I kind of disrupted things. I don't know if it's possible to see them all, but there are fruit flies buzzing all over the place, or gnats or whatever they are. So I don't know if we pull this off, if we might even see more. I'm not sure what those ones down there are. They look like a double wide, almost like there's a big one, but I'm sensing that that just might be two of them connected at the hip, doing who knows what, probably reproducing. And my hope was that at the end of this feeding, after we finish and before we put everything away, that I would just rest this right on top in the hopes that it would attract the bugs, and that the bugs would fall into there and drown, and maybe help with the reduction of the number of flying insects inside of my VermiBag Mini. So I would definitely be interested in hearing anyone's feedback with regards to pros and cons, or any gotchas with doing that. So especially if there's any gotchas, please let me know in the comments. But we're going to feed this bin. Shouldn't take too long. So let's get a little bit closer in so we can see what we're doing. You might remember, if you saw the last video that we had when we fed this bin last, this little clear plastic portal that you can open up and see from the outside. I positioned the camera right up against that glass to give us a nice close-up view of what was going on. Kind of an interesting close-up view, but I went back to this old perspective. A little bit easier, I guess. I think it's going to produce a slightly better end result too. I always get a little bit of a glare every time I try to shoot through that clear plastic pane, probably because my surroundings, my background is a little bit brightly lit and reflecting. So here too, every layer reveals another bunch of bugs, and these bugs are like right in front of my face too. So I've been more or less ignoring it, but I figured now was the time to really finally do something about it. So hopefully the vinegar is going to solve the problem. I guess we'll see next time we check in, but for now it's just a matter of giving them this feeding. And since this bin or bag is running as a continuous flow-through setup, I've been telling myself for the past 3 or more months that I'm not really going to let myself rummage through the content of the bin and dig down into it. I'm going to try to keep to the operating methodology of one of these containers and simply top feed, place in the new feeding and whatever else I'm going to add, and resist the urge to poke around down into the material. But we always get a chance to see a fair number of worms, and I think that's because of that last piece of plastic that we removed. For the longest time I was always covering up with paper products, and more recently, not too long ago, I adopted the use of plastic to cover up my bins, and ever since then the moisture in my bins has been almost perfect. In the past I would always have extremely dry top surfaces, even dryness around the edges. And more recently, ever since I've been covering up with a sheet of plastic in all my bins, it seems like the material throughout the bin just remains much more worm friendly in terms of the moisture content, and it's visible right off the bat just by taking some of this leafy matter off the very top surface. Even out here on the very edge on the corner, we're finding worms hanging out because the material is a nice damp consistency. And you know, I wouldn't even go so far as to say that it's damp. It's got the right moisture content, but it's not damp. Definitely not damp. So I mean, if you just grab a little bit of the material, you can see that it crumbles completely in your hands, and there's no clumping of it whatsoever, no muddiness. And that's just what I've been finding in all my bins ever since I started adding the plastic sheet over the top of each bin. That's almost consistent with every one of my bins, that the material looks like this. And I can imagine myself, you know, sifting this stuff very easily. This stuff would go right through a sifter, no problem, and, you know, allow for the separation of a bunch of larger uncomposted materials if you were trying to clear out a batch of castings quickly and harvest. But I don't want to dig much more in because it's already kind of violating my self-imposed rule here of treating this as a top-fed only flow-through bin. But the one thing we do allow for ourselves usually is to poke down right down the middle where the last feeding was placed in, just to get a sense of how that last feeding is progressing. And here we can already see some of the materials that the worms were provided with previously. It's banana peels. These are like parts of a kohlrabi or kohlrabi, or I'm not even sure what this is. I think it is, but this stuff is taking a little bit longer to break down. It hardly looks like it's been touched. It's not even softening up. It's actually quite hard still. But that doesn't matter. I'm sure that the microscopic life forms that normally get the breakdown process started are already well within this material, working their way through it. So hopefully soon we'll start seeing some progress on that material. I also wonder if I had not frozen it before I placed it in here. A lot of times if you freeze stuff, it rarely has that sort of a consistency after it thaws out. This stuff might have been placed in here fresh, which in itself would provide a little bit of a disadvantage when it comes to breaking down. So I'm not going to go digging any deeper than that. I'm going to just go ahead and place this next feeding right on top. I guess these pieces of newspaper, which were kind of serving the purpose of top covering, are really getting tattered here. Just wondering if we're going to even be able to continue to use them in that fashion anymore going forward. I've got another piece of paper we can always replace this with to have a new top covering. So let's grab some food. All right, so now I think that whole mango is going to be the hit of the party. So we'll put all the veggies down first, just like a little child. Give them the veggies first, because we know they'll gobble up the fruits. We want them to also work down the veggies. So just creating a little bit of a pattern here. Maybe we'll be able to still see it next time we come back in here. And I'm even taking the skin side of the mango and placing it down so that the more meaty portion of it is facing up. Maybe that'll somewhat prolong the decomposition process and kind of make the worms have to work for it, have to climb up to get to the exposed side of it. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. So we got ourselves a nice little, I don't know, what does this look like? Flux capacitor? Does anyone know what I'm talking about? Get the reference? So we've created ourselves a nice little pattern here with the food. And I think that we're just going to maybe use this scrap paper here as kind of more targeted covering for these food scraps. And that makes me think that this paper is going to get a lot of attention. Probably going to get broken down pretty quickly this way by being right on top of the delicious food items. I doubt that we'll see much of this paper after we get back into this next feeding. like I always do, I'm going to include a little bit of coffee in here as well. It's a pretty generous helping. I've always got plenty of coffee on hand, so I don't have to be sparing with it. And I'm trying to get a read on the rough level of this bin. I did revisit my video in which I had kind of announced to the audience that I was going to adopt this top feeding approach and no dig approach. And at that point, I was using this stitched seam here as kind of a reference point, and I believe I was at least 1.5 inches or more below that line about 3 months ago. So we've gradually risen the level of this bin. And I mean, if you were to just throw a bunch of food in here, it would probably fill the whole thing up. Once it all breaks down into castings, it does occupy a significantly smaller space. And I'm not really sure how far I want to take it, you know. I mean, at some point I'll have to decide that it's time to harvest. Although, you know, there again, I'm kind of stuck in my old mode of thinking. The main thinking is that, you know, hey, this tub is almost ready for harvest, so let's get ready for that. I got to start thinking a little bit differently in terms of how to handle a flow-through bin. In a flow-through bin, you really have to make no preparations for harvesting. You can just go ahead and open the hatch at the bottom, let the castings drop out, and then up top it's just business as usual. Other than the level of it potentially dropping, or most likely dropping, you probably don't hardly feel any effect other than having a little bit more space in the bin after you harvest one of these. But I'm not speaking from experience. I've only seen a few videos on it. I've never done it myself so far. So I've had this bin in service for I don't know how many months now, numerous months. Oops, there goes my glove. And I've yet to harvest. But at some point, we'll probably just give it a try, even though I don't really have a dire need for getting the castings out. I've planted my garden for this year. And, you know, I guess at some point I'll probably want to use some castings material to create a sort of a top covering of my plants out in the garden, but that's a ways off, so I'm definitely good when it comes to castings right now. But more for the purposes of, you know, experiencing what's involved with harvesting the material out of one of these types of containers, since it is all still kind of new to me. So let's grab that other piece of paper that I had talked about earlier. Piece of newspaper will cover the feeding area and replace the piece of paper that had been there priorly, and replace the piece of paper that was covering everything previously. Now we can go ahead and restore the plastic covering to help preserve the moisture within the bin. And like I said, if you haven't considered doing this in your own bins, I do highly recommend applying a sheet of plastic bag. Anything you've got works great, and I think it helps a great deal in terms of moisture retention within the bin. So the last thing to happen here is the replacement of the top piece of cardboard on which I'm going to place this new addition, which is a little bath, a little acidic bath of vinegar for the flying insects. I'm not certain what to expect from this. I'm keeping my fingers crossed for this. I hope it helps reduce the bug population in here. So we'll have to see how it works. I don't know how long it would take for a container like this to evaporate dry either. I don't know, it might just be a couple days and there might be no liquid left anyway, but hopefully that's enough to, you know, deal with the matter at hand, and hopefully the situation is resolved successfully. So we'll see how that goes. I don't have much left to do here. I'll remove this briefly while I put the container back into its location in the corner, and then I'll put this back on here, cover things up, and take care of the cleaning and disposition of some of the trash here. I guess this is the end of this glove. I do my best to get as many uses out of these gloves as possible, but once in a while they just call it quits, and that's that. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. I really hope you did. If you did, as always, all I ask is that you just throw me a quick thumbs up, because it does mean a lot. And, you know, if you're interested in seeing more content like this, then you can always subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification so you can get emails or some sort of notification from YouTube that there's new content online. And And then I guess we'll see you back here next time. Thanks again for watching, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. I appreciate your company. I look forward to reading your comments, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.